Welcome, everyone, to the Fall 2024 Civic Engagement Speaking Contest. Yay! Now, you, the brave, here in our physical space, have braved the cold weather, wind, and flurries to be here. We have many friends joining us online. So thank you so much for spending your time with us this evening during a very, very busy time of the year, as I think we can all agree. Now, I had to write this down in my notes because I usually forget to introduce myself. So let me actually start with that for once. So hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Bonnie Serlecki. You can just call me Bonnie. I am an associate teaching professor in the CAS department and the director of our CAS 100 program. I'm very pleased to welcome you here tonight for what might seem a little bit odd, a speaking contest, right? But I think that the idea, the flavor of this evening is to give some of our CAS 100 students a chance to show off the amazing research and work that they've put in during this semester. In fact, let me ask you speakers tonight, the 6 of you, how many of you at the beginning of the semester pictured yourself in this moment? How many of you will admit maybe weren't too enthusiastic about taking CAS 100? Right? And that's totally fair. After all, almost all of us struggle with at least a little bit of apprehension anxiety when it comes to public speaking because of many different factors. In fact, I know when I hear students talk about CAS 100, a lot of times they talk about having to take their CAS 100 class, right? Because that's one of the first things that you hear about. Once you start picking your classes after you get admitted, you know that almost everyone will take CAS 100 at some point during their Penn State career. So of course, I like to say that y'all have the opportunity to take CAS 100 because even though it's not so pleasant sometimes, public speaking and civic engagement are foundational skills that we're all going to carry forward with us, not only in our professional and personal careers, but as members of so many different communities. Now, one thing I don't think I shared with you contestants when I met you all on Tuesday night was that, like you, I'm also an alum of Penn State. So I got both my master's degree and my PhD from the CAS department here at Penn State. So I've taught CAS 100 quite a long time. And I remember back when I was a graduate student, on occasion, I remember having students in my class who would sometimes come to me and just kind of be at a loss for what topic they wanted to talk about for this policy speech assignment, right? And you know what? I don't hear students with that problem anymore. Our students have something to say. And that's one of the big roles of our CAS 100 program as well. You know, that whole part about Penn State being a land-grant university. Again, when I was a graduate student, I didn't know what that meant. I'm like, oh, that sounds nice, right? But Penn State was founded to give residents of Penn State, no matter what their career was, farmers, engineers, teachers, a chance to practice being a competent communicator, right? And why we've chosen the speeches for tonight are because you have something to say. So for those of you in our audience, whether you're here in lovely Thomas 201 or whether you're joining us over our Zoom feed, tonight you are going to hear from 6 Penn State students who have identified a social problem, a community problem that impacts us all. And each speaker is going to propose at least one potential solution to address that problem. That's what we call civic engagement. We learn about that in CAS 100, right? And I think what's interesting and ultimately enjoyable about the experience that you've had is, yeah, you do get a chance to use your voice. In fact, remember way at the beginning of the semester when we talked about how the very first people to practice public speaking and talk about it, the art of persuasion rhetoric, were those ancient Greeks, right? The first democracy. And they had that concept of kairos, right? Timing. But their concept of timing is really specific, not just saying something at the right time, but in fact, seizing the moment and really capitalizing upon opportunity to make yourself heard, to bring together community members in the endeavor of problem solving. So first of all, congratulations to all of you, because you've gotten people to listen to your speeches, right? We hear so many different messages on a day-to-day basis. To know that your words, that you took the time to think about and craft and make choices in order to persuade community members of your message, that's a skill set that will benefit you tremendously and benefit your community. So I'm really excited because I know what the topics are for these 6 amazing speakers tonight. And I know that you're going to be able to connect not only with the audience here in Thomas, but with our audience on Zoom as well. Now, before I turn it over to our speakers, because of course they're the star of the show and no one needs to hear that much more from me, there is the portion of the show where I need to give all the thank yous, right? So let me go through those and then we'll get to the good stuff. So first, of course, I would love to thank the CAS department. Communication Arts and Sciences at Penn State has been around since 1959, and we've been doing this contest now for, I want to say about 25 years, perhaps, right? So we have a long-standing tradition of the idea not only being a public speaker, but using those skill sets for civic engagement, right? So thank you, CAS department. And in particular, I want to give a huge kudos to one of our CAS department admin members, Jaren Lee, for helping us with things like coordinating the different rooms and spaces for the contest, helping with promotional materials, etc. I think you also know there's another person in the CAS department who needs to be thanked for their role. And that, of course, is Mr. Dan Lee. Dan, wave to everybody. Wave to everybody at home, right? So Dan is a PhD candidate in CAS and is also the assistant director of CAS 100 this year. So this contest is really his baby, and he should really get the bulk of the credit for all the behind the scenes work and the logistics that have made tonight possible, including the part where our winners are going to get some money. As again, just a little bit of a reward for your time and for your effort this semester. That means I'm going to let Dan do the fun part at the end and announce the winners too. Yes. Okay. Now, in addition to those fantastic members of the CAS community, I also want to take a moment to thank the CAS 100 instructors, several of whom are in attendance tonight. Yay. I think, yeah. I know for a fact the instructors for all 6 of our speakers tonight are here to support those students, but many CAS instructors, CAS 100 instructors, have nominated participants who competed earlier in the week, and many of our CAS 100 instructors served as judges for those preliminary rounds. Now, speaking of judges, would you like to meet our judges for tonight's competition? Yes, this is the fun part too. And in fact, 3 of them are all members of the CAS community as well. So first, I would like to welcome Sergio Pena. Hi, Sergio. So Sergio is also a PhD student in the CAS department and was last year's assistant director of CAS 100. So who knows this contest better than Sergio? So we thought, let's bring Sergio on back as a judge. And in fact, to tell you a little bit more about Sergio and his interests as they relate to communication, Sergio studies resistance to social change and progress within both interpersonal narratives and media narratives. In fact, if you get to know Sergio a little bit, you'll find out that one of the forms of media that you are known for your research and investigation into is a little show called RuPaul's Drag Race. So if you're interested, grab Sergio and talk to Sergio a little bit more about their research. Our second judge tonight is Dr. Andy Gilmore. Hi, Andy. Andy is an assistant teaching professor of CAS who hails from Manchester, England. Everyone loves Andy's accent. If you're an Andy student, that's what I hear. That's what they love the most about you, right, Andy? But in addition to teaching across CAS 100, Andy studies how speakers challenge and disrupt power structures and practices in order to generate change. That's what rhetoric is about. That's what you've been studying, especially in relation to this policy speech, right? In particular, I'd like to share with you that Andy has been recognized for his research on the strategies of resistance employed by Hong Kong's pro-democracy advocates. Thank you for joining us tonight, Andy. Our third judge tonight is Dr. Jeremy Engels. Hi, Jeremy. Dr. Engels, who prefers to be called Jeremy, just like I do as well, prefer just to be called Bonnie. Jeremy is an endowed liberal arts professor of communication arts and sciences. Jeremy is also a yoga and mindfulness teacher, if you didn't know that, and the co-founder of Yoga Lab here in State College. I studied with Dr. Engels when I was a graduate student in the CAS department as well. So I also feel it's really helpful to share what Jeremy researches. So Jeremy describes himself as an ethicist. I love that word. That's fabulous. An ethicist who studies democracy's past so that we can imagine new and better democratic futures. That sounds pretty relevant to some of the stuff this contest is about, right? I'd say so. Lastly, we have a fourth judge who is joining us on Zoom tonight. We can see her on the Zoom feed. Hi, Erin. Erin Brocher is joining us as a student who competed in last semester's Civic Engagement Speaking Contest. In fact, Erin was our runner-up. Our winner has gone on and graduated and, is working at her job tonight. Right? So we've asked Erin to join us, and Erin was so willing to do so that she is joining us from the Czech Republic tonight, where she is studying abroad. But hell, again, who else better to judge and give feedback to our speakers tonight than someone like Erin? And I remember Erin's speech very vividly and found it very appealing because Erin talked about an issue that's very near and dear to my heart, which is pedestrian safety in State College. I live downtown, and so I walk to campus every day and pretty much walk everywhere. So I know a little bit something about pedestrian safety, but in particular, I was really struck by how Erin used her policy speech to bring in some of her experiences and past research and past civic engagement in her hometown, where she actively worked on a campaign to improve her hometown's pedestrian safety. And she proposed some measures that worked well in her hometown that hopefully we could take a look at here in State College as well. Her speech was fabulous, and in fact, you could find it on the CAS YouTube channel if you would like to view it. Thank you very much for your time, judges. Now, really quickly, I also think it's worth thanking you, our audience members, right? You're interested in hearing what these speakers have to say, maybe because related to them, or maybe they're your classmate, or maybe you're getting some extra credit from one of your CAS 100 instructors. But you can't have civic engagement without an audience, without communities who are willing to listen and take part in the process of deliberation when it comes to identifying ways that we can improve our various communities, ways that we can hold our institutions in check, right? So there's no contest without you, our audience members, both here in person and those of you over Zoom. And thank you, many of you, for supporting our speakers here tonight. Lastly, I want to thank you 6 speakers tonight for, again, having the wisdom, the courage to seize the moment and being willing to share with us. One of the reasons why public speaking can be so intimidating for people is by the very nature of being a speaker, you're being vulnerable, right? Even by the topic you've chosen to speak about and research about and you're willing to advocate for, that shows character. That shows a willingness to engage with your community, right? So thank you so much, not only for your work throughout the semester in your classes, but for being willing to share your ideas with us tonight. All right. Without further ado, I think we should get the contest going. So I am pleased to introduce our first speaker tonight. We will hear, to start off the show, from Ty Rivera, who is instructed by Mark Kohler this semester. Ty? I'm the one who should have practiced the mic.
Take your time. Oops. Okay.
Un momento, por favor.
Nicole Luthane and her daughter Katerina were stopped at a red light before the accident happened. A man in his heavy-duty truck slammed into the rear of Nicole's car. The crash seriously injured Miss Luthane, and her daughter had to be airlifted to a nearby hospital where she died 2 days later. Had that man been in a lighter vehicle and drove more carefully, Nicole's daughter might have survived the horrific crash. According to a quote from an IIHS researcher interviewed by The Economist, there may be a certain point where you say, you know what, passenger vehicles shouldn't be weighing this much, but it would, politically, be really hard to gain any momentum on that. Well, I think, however, that there is a way to curb the size and weight of these vehicles. Closing the regulatory loopholes on light trucks and SUVs in the United States is the key to preventing many of the problems American roadways face. Today, I will explain to you the myriad of problems caused by the light truck exemption, how we can close the regulatory loopholes, and how closing those loopholes can benefit traveling in America. The overabundance of light trucks and SUVs on America's roads has caused chaos over the past few decades. Light trucks and SUVs are more likely to cause pedestrian deaths when compared to cars. In a study reported on by US News, it found that light trucks and SUVs with a hood height of over 40 inches were 45% more likely to kill a pedestrian than cars with a hood height of 30 inches or less. Also, from that same study, pedestrian deaths have risen 13% in 2021 to 7,342 deaths, which is the highest since 1981. This image from the advocacy group Kids in Cars really puts the SUV hood heights into perspective. There are 17 children piled in front of that GMC Yukon SUV, and you wouldn't be able to see any of them from the driver's seat. These statistics put in full display the danger that light trucks and SUVs cause to pedestrians. I've already given some anecdotal evidence on the dangers of motor vehicle crashes with light trucks and SUVs, but I want to put some data behind it too. According to a study and this data reported on by The Economist, for every extra 1,000 pounds of weight that the car crashing into you has, your chances of dying increase by 45%. In other words, using this graphic from carsize.com, if you were driving this Honda Civic right here and this Ford F-350 crashes into you, you are 7 times more likely to die than the person who just crashed into you. This statistic becomes even more shocking when you realize just how many light trucks and SUVs are on our roads. According to Hedges & Company, it reports that 62% of all registered vehicles in the United States are light trucks and SUVs, which means that your likelihood of getting into a crash with one is much higher than with a car. Light trucks and SUVs are also worse for the environment overall than cars. In data gathered from 2010 to 2021 by the International Energy Agency, SUVs were accounted as the second highest emitter of CO2 right behind the power sector. This means that SUVs are one of the worst offenders against CO2 emissions when compared to other energy subsectors, such as traditional cars and aviation. Now that we have established the myriad of problems caused by light trucks and SUVs, let's pivot to how we can change that. The key to reducing the number of light trucks and SUVs on the road is by removing the loopholes in the CAFE standards regulated by the National Highway Traffic Safety Association, or NHTSA, and the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA. The Corporate Average Fuel Economy, or CAFE, is a set of fuel economy requirements that automakers have to abide by when making their vehicles, or they face financial penalties. The problem within the CAFE standards, however, is how they classify light trucks. Let's take a look at this graph from the US Department of Energy. It shows passenger cars in blue and light trucks in yellow. From the year 2010 and beyond, the CAFE regulatory gap between the two becomes much steeper. According to an article from Capital One Auto Navigator, the way the EPA classifies light trucks is very broad, which allowed cars to balloon in size in the first place. Vague language such as, quote, made with special features enabling off-street or off-highway use, or, quote, a basic vehicle frontal area of 45 square feet or less, made auto manufacturers realize that they could get away with larger, less efficient cars if they just adhere to these guidelines. This goes to show that if we don't change the course at CAFE standards for light trucks and SUVs soon, automakers will continue to abuse these loopholes to make larger, more dangerous, and more fuel inefficient cars at a cheaper price. If we are to eliminate this regulatory loophole, there are many roads, no pun intended, that we can take to implement change. Change could start all the way at the top with an executive order issued by the president if he or she feels that this issue is grave enough to reverse the regulations in place. This is unlikely, however, so the next step down is Congress. They have the power to force the EPA and the NHTSA to reverse the regulations via an act passed by the legislative branch. The next step down, as previously said, is the EPA, which sets the standards for the regulations the NHTSA puts in place for automobiles. They have the power to change the current state of fuel economy regulations and implement a plan to ensure light trucks and SUVs are held to as strict of a standard as cars. With these crucial changes to the CAFE standards, we can pave the way for positive change. American roadways will benefit in more ways than one with lower amounts of light trucks and SUVs on the road. Our roadways would become safer overall. For example, take a look at this map from Big Think. It compares the amount of road deaths per million people in the US to Europe. A quote from this very same source sums this idea up very well. The roads in Wyoming are 9 times deadlier than those in Ireland. Europe has lesser amounts of light trucks and SUVs on their roads, and it is highly reflected on in this graphic. We will also have access to a wider range of smaller, more efficient vehicles to purchase in the US. The ending of the light truck exemption will help push the US to lift the heavy import tax on foreign-made light trucks. According to US Customs and Border Protection, all foreign-made light trucks have a 25% import tax tacked onto their price. With the tax lifted, it would allow foreign-made light trucks to be purchased for practical purposes on the US mainland. You've actually already seen the practicality of foreign-made light trucks here at PSU. Some of the maintenance workers on campus use Kai trucks, imported and made in Japan, for carrying their equipment and other items around campus. And just to show you how small they are, here's one next to a typical Ford F-150. Take notice to how their bed sizes are practically the exact same. Our net carbon emissions will also decrease with SUVs eliminated from our roads. If we took the same graph that I used from the IEA, we can actually see that traditional cars had a net negative amount of carbon emissions from 2010 to 2021. This means that cars designed and used at the time were more fuel efficient and produced less CO2 overall compared to previous years. And it's only bound to get better as technology progresses. Overall, the problem of light trucks and SUVs on American roads is one that will take time to undo, but I have full faith that more attention will be brought to it soon. I have explained the problems with light trucks and SUVs on our roads, what our plan is to help curb this crisis, and the benefits to implementing that plan. I leave you with this quote from American entrepreneur Robin Chase. Transportation is at the center of the world, is the glue of our daily lives. When it goes well, we don't see it. But when it goes wrong, it negatively colors our day, makes us angry, and curtails our possibilities. Thank you. Here it goes.
People enter this video running.
It's okay, didn't stop me.
Yeah, got it. Hit reset. Okay.
Thank you, Ty. Our second speaker tonight is Andre Marinac, is that correct? Right? Who was instructed this semester by Tony Irizarry. Andre.
You don't have to blanket. Awesome, thank you. Alrighty, we should be all good. Hello, everyone. My name is Andre Marinac, and today I'll be presenting about online security among college students at Penn State. A while ago, when I was younger, I wanted to watch my favorite TV show, Regular Show. Unfortunately, they took it off the TV that we had, and my family didn't have any streaming services. So I decided I would look into Hulu and their free trial. And there's this little part at the bottom that if you look a little closer, it says the price will increase to about $11 after the free trial ends. And I had thought, well, I'd never been caught by these before, so I asked my parents, hey, can I borrow your credit card? And they said, yeah, just make sure you remember to cancel it. And I watched about 3 or 4 seasons of Regular Show, and then I got logged out and couldn't remember my password. Fast forward about 4 to 5 months later, my dad comes with a credit card bill and says, Andre, do you know what all these charges are? Crap, I totally forgot to cancel that. Unfortunately, some people aren't as lucky to just have an accidental charge that's on their card for maybe about $60 to $70. Sometimes people can face up to thousands and thousands of dollars worth of damage on their card that wasn't even their fault. Penn State doesn't address the lack of education regarding their students' online security and privacy. And through this, we can solve using an education program at first-year seminars that can directly impact students. Today, what we're going to go over is the problem, the cause, and the solution for online security among college students. So to take a look at the problem, over 85% or 80% of hacking-related breaches are actually caused by stolen and reused credentials, meaning your password and information from one site gets stolen and is used on practically every other site possible that they can use. And according to Verizon's 2019 analysis, there's also something called credential stuffing, which means even if you change your password from one site to another just by a couple characters or adding an exclamation point or another number, it's simply not enough to protect yourself. They'll brute force your online accounts by trying variations of the original passwords that they stole, meaning changing it again by a couple letters or just a little bit isn't actually enough to protect yourself. The other thing I want to look at, and bear with me, there's going to be a lot of information on these slides, is Fraud's 2024 top 10 list of data breaches. So here are 4 of the biggest data breaches: Yahoo, Marriott International, Equifax, and eBay. And there it shows the dates and all the information that was actually stolen from its users with the number of users that were actually impacted. Now stay with me again. We're going to look at 4 more. Target, LinkedIn, Sony, and Uber, affecting over 4.2 billion users and all of their data compromised. For anyone who knows how to use the internet well, they can pretty much have all of that data for free. And again, that's a lot of information for so many people. So it's pretty likely that somebody in this room is on one of those data leaks. And not only that, almost all of us are extremely likely to have faced at least one data breach from our online accounts. Another thing I want to look at is financial consequences. 52 million Americans, according to Security 2024's report, faced credit or debit card fraud last year, and this totaled over $5 billion worth of fraudulent charges, meaning it's actively affecting people who use those credit and debit cards. Now again, this is people in general, but it also affects students specifically. Specifically speaking, Penn State doesn't actually have any education on how to keep yourself secure online with your accounts. According to World Metric, in 2024, over 65% of people actually reuse passwords. That means over half of you in this room reuse your passwords. I can say I used to be one of those people, and I still do it for some of my accounts. And among those, younger individuals are at a way higher risk due to the sheer amount of online accounts that they have, meaning it's actively affecting those college students who are recently getting debit and credit cards or have one from their parents who weren't actually taught why it matters to be secure online. Now, again, I said about the cause, everyone is reusing passwords, setting up two-factor authentication, but only when they're forced to. Most people in this room probably only have it set up for their Penn State email, and they have to use Microsoft Authenticator every single time, and maybe your banking details. But there's so many other accounts online that we just don't want to set it up because of the hassle, and we kind of know there's some type of risk, but we don't know about how important those data breaches can actually be. Additionally, if you buy things online, you're putting your debit or credit card onto a website and probably forgetting it's there until you use it the next time. Meaning there's probably a range of 5, 10, 20 websites that have your card details that are sitting there. And think about it. There's probably at least 30 websites that have my credit information, and that means it's pretty likely that one of those is going to face a data leak sometime in the future. So you have to figure out a way to protect yourself. Another thing I want to look at is how we make risky decisions. 4 out of 5 cardholders, according to Security's 2024 report, have made a risky decision, including myself, because we want that ease of access of putting a card online just so we can pay for something. We don't want to go through the hoops of setting up PayPal or another secure method to actually make sure we're secure online. It's something that we're not taught about, and we're not told what's a better way we can do than setting up a million different accounts rather than using our actual credit card. And again, to look at the further impact on students here at Penn State, we'll look at college students and how often they use cards. About 53% of them use credit cards regularly, and 85% of them use debit cards, again, regularly. And these are people that are 18, 19, 20 years old and haven't gotten any education. And unfortunately, Penn State isn't helping that in any way. So let's look at the solution. Penn State can implement an education system at first-year seminars to fix this inadvertent issue. It's not an issue that's caused by Penn State. It's other people who are stealing our online information. But if we have a capacity builder, we can make students put in minimal effort for a maximum benefit to protect themselves online. This can be done through a workshop that's controlled by the university senate and faculty who oversee first-year seminars. The structure of this is going to be taking place at all first-year seminars, and it would only take about 30 to 45 minutes per first-year seminar class to give students a chance to protect themselves online. Another thing we have to look at is only one member would need to be present to actually educate those students. It's not a big show or a huge deal to actually do this. It's just something that Penn State isn't, quite frankly, doing. And what they can actually teach is the first thing, reusing passwords. Instead of doing that, use a free available password manager, such as Bitwarden, LastPass, or iCloud Keychain, which comes on every iPhone made. I personally use Bitwarden, and it is entirely free for any type of device. But students may not know where to go because they see so many paid versions and they don't want to pay for something that they don't know. But it is really easy to set up, and you can make an account in under 2 minutes. The second thing that should be taught more about is two-factor authentication. Set it up for more important accounts rather than just your Penn State or your banking information. Because again, they can get other passwords and other information to reset your passwords. So if you use two-factor authentication, someone can have your username and password, but you can be protected against that. A third thing I want to look at is personally my favorite, privacy cards. Basically what these are is burner cards that you can get, which up to 12 burner cards every single month. So instead of putting your actual card information online, you can use any of these. And this takes just under 5 minutes to set up an account, and it's extremely easy and something that I personally use. And some of the options on here are a merchant lock, meaning if I have a Netflix subscription, I can make it so only Netflix can actually charge me. And with that, I can set up single-use cards so that the first time a card is charged, that is the only charge that can go through on those card details. I can give it out to everyone in the world, and no more charges can go through. And one of my favorite things is actually the usage limit that you can put on these. I can set a $20 limit so that Netflix can only charge me $20 a month. And again, even if anyone else had that information, the most they could charge for whatever limit I set is exactly that limit, no matter what details or information they have about you. How we can actually promote this? Well, instead of, paying $60 to $80 for a free trial that you forgot, you can use a privacy card and set it to $1, and it'll automatically cancel that account after your free subscription is over. And forgetting passwords. Instead of resetting your password through email or through your phone every time, you can just pull up your password manager, copy and paste it into the user login, and make it a stress-free, easy solution to make your life, frankly, a lot easier. And again, this solution does have a few concerns. Not every single student is going to be fully paying attention, and that doesn't mean using these tools makes you 100% guaranteed to never have your data breached. But again, it's something so small that can get you such a large amount of protection. And the feasibility of this is frankly so easy. It would be very little cost, maybe hire a couple faculty members if needed, if no one would be willing to do this as they're in addition to their current position. And it would take very little space and again, very little time, only seeing each first year seminar one time within the semester. And that outcome can look like students not reusing passwords, using two-factor authentication for more than their banking accounts and their Penn State email, and cards that can't be used by other people when you don't want them to be. To wrap everything up, Penn State addresses this in no way, but it can very easily do this through a first year seminar. And we went through the problem, the cause, and the solution. And again, I hope this doesn't happen to you all, like anything such as a small free trial or fraudulent charges. But I believe so much in these tools. It's not just a quick gimmick or something that might protect you, that I'm going to show you how effective it actually is. I'm going to put 2 of my actual credit card information on here for you all to see. This is real information that can actively be used, but if you see up here, it can only be charged a single dollar. And these are active that anyone could use right now online. That's how much I believe in these tools. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. We'll see if those dollars get claimed in the next hour. Just kidding, just kidding. Okay, our third speaker tonight, Shreyas Naik, who is also instructed by Mark Kohler. Shrey, here you go.
Here's me posing with Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, and Barack Obama. It took me one selfie and 10 minutes of prompting to legally generate these ridiculous but convincing images. What's more absurd is that in this country, one could even get away with deceiving the masses with images such as these, be it explicit deepfakes of you or provocative images of world leaders. According to SumSub and Deep Media, deepfakes increased tenfold between 2022 and 2023, with that number standing at 500,000 at the end of that period. This means that by the time I graduate, there could be over 500 billion deepfakes in circulation. In the words of AI critic and historian Yuval Noah Harari, we are now in an era of mass-produced, machine-generated fiction. With this rapid spread of misinformation, we risk living in a world where truth no longer aligns with our perception of it. AI-generated misinformation is a threat to public safety and trust. It must be mitigated through federal mandatory disclosure laws to ensure that there are no misinformation spread through AI. In this speech, we'll dive face first into the alarming consequences of AI, the policy solution that can address them, and the reasons that make it the best approach to take. What makes AI-generated misinformation just such a complex problem to solve is that it causes harm at multiple levels. Micro-scale deepfake attacks involve targeting and defaming an individual. Taylor Quinn is the pseudonym of a woman who in 2020 became victim to such an attack. As reported by CBC, pornographic images of what appeared to be her were posted on an adult website. The same article mentions a conversation she had with one of the officers that said to her they didn't break any laws, so they had the right to do that. She was only 22 at the time. In fact, this stat by Sensity reveals that since 2018, 90 to 95% of all deepfake media has been non-consensual pornography. While these incidents were terrifying, their effects were still relatively localized. In the case of macro-scale deepfake attacks, the objective is to use the target to deceive the masses. Deepfake-enabled impersonations of famous figures, country leaders, and politicians are designed to spread political propaganda or even cause international conflict. Unlike micro-scale attacks, these deepfakes target entire populations, undermining trust in leaders, institutions, and the very democratic process. A recent example mentioned in an article by The Guardian includes a deepfake of the world's biggest pop star, Taylor Swift, seemingly endorsing Donald Trump in the 2024 elections. A deception that could have swayed millions. As David Becker, the head of Center for Election Innovation and Research, warns, they don't need to convince us that what they're saying, the lies they're telling us, are true. They only need to convince us that there is no truth, that you cannot believe anything that you're told. By dismantling the public's ability to distinguish truth from fiction, deepfakes erode the very foundation of informed decision-making upon which democracy relies on. Now that we've established the seriousness of this problem, let me take you through my solution proposal. I propose that federal laws be made to mandate all AI generation tools to require a clear, conspicuous disclosure. Along with this, it must need metadata that identifies the source, tool, and the individual responsible for the creation of the media. This two-pronged approach solves the problem of AI-generated misinformation right at the source. Firstly, the conspicuous disclosure directly mitigates the macro-scale harms associated with AI. The clear, conspicuous disclosure ensures that even a non-speculative viewer could easily identify a realistic deepfake. The second part of my solution, embedding metadata, addresses the micro-scale harms of AI-generated content. By requiring that each AI-generated image include metadata, we establish a clear chain of accountability. In cases of misuse or targeted attacks, this would allow authorities to trace the content back to its source. This ensures that attackers like those that targeted Taylor are held responsible for their actions. Finally, these laws would need to be implemented by the Federal Communications Commission and applied universally to all developers of AI generation tools. Enforcing this at a federal level ensures uniformity across states, allowing companies to adapt more seamlessly, while creating a consistent legal framework and leaving no room for loopholes. With this plan in place, let us see how it compares to some existing solutions. With efforts by both AI developers and government bodies have been made to tackle this issue, but they've had varying degrees of success. None of them have managed to address the full scope of the problem, though. Some AI companies try to limit the misuse by using algorithms to block explicit or inappropriate content. While this works in some cases, many images simply slip through. Additionally, not all companies take this approach, meaning a perpetrator could simply use a different tool. The proposed federal policy will demand transparency from all AI companies by labeling their generations. When it comes to government action, Public Citizen reports that 27 of 50 states have already passed legislation with respect to deepfakes in elections. While this is a step in the right direction, it is still limited to deepfake-related uses only. My solution expands the scope to prevent even individual victimization. A more inclusive policy by California state that my proposal draws inspiration from is the California AI Transparency Act. While being similar to my solution in all other aspects, it only falls short by making conspicuous disclosures optional, leaving room for large-scale deception. My approach mandates these disclosures. Some may argue that people will resist this disclosure because it could interfere with the content itself. But in effect, this wouldn't be much different from movie disclaimers or parental advisory stickers that have been around for almost half a century. AI disclaimers are simply an adaptation of these to today's needs. In fact, a Pulse survey shows that 94% of all consumers believe that AI content should be disclosed. As Ryan Carrier, the founder of For Humanity, said, AI users have the right to know the risks associated with the use of a tool, just like the side effects of a drug. With that, I near the end of this speech, a speech where we spoke about the serious harms caused by AI misinformation, went over a systematic policy plan that could solve this issue, and the reasons why it is the best approach to take. Our world seems to be tending towards an almost cynical future, one where people are oblivious to reality and innocents are blackmailed with synthesized leverage, one where the only opinions are the ones implanted, and one where democracy has no meaning. But there is hope in honesty, in being transparent so people can see the truth. I'll leave you with the words of Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. I don't think that the world will put up anymore with any of us coming up with something that we haven't thought through. Safety, equity, and trust. These are big issues for the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shrey. All right, on the way up to the front is our fourth speaker tonight, Evan Varlas, who is instructed by Courtney Wright. Evan.
You able to hear me all right? Okay. Black shoes, basic blues, no names, all game. This Penn State football mantra emphasizes the importance of tradition, not only to our football program, but also to our university. And in this new age of college football, filled with NIL and corporatization, a new issue has come to the forefront: stadium naming rights deals. That is why I am calling for the Penn State Board of Trustees, with the help of the whole Penn State community, especially Athletic Director Pat Kraft, who has been one of the greatest assets for our athletic programs in our university, to push for the passing of this mandate that bans any future selling of the naming rights of Beaver Stadium. I'll be going over today why this issue is relevant and some potential harms if this issue is not addressed. I'll also be discussing my two-step solution plan and going over 3 benefits that we will see with the implementation of my solutions. Now to start, I want to go over why this issue is relevant and what could be some potential harms if this is not addressed. Because of the expansion of name, image, and likeness, more universities and athletic programs are looking for ways to pay for their players. And one way that they have identified is to sell the naming rights to their stadiums. On August 6, 2024, Florida International University sold the naming rights of their stadium to legendary artist Pitbull for $1.2 million. On August 8, 2023, the Associated Press reports that Georgia Tech University sold the naming rights of their field to the car company Hyundai for $55 million over 20 years. And on August 2nd, 2023, Arizona State News reported that Arizona State University sold the naming rights to their stadium to Mountain America Credit Union. These examples are just 3 of the over 11
Power 4 universities and football programs that have sold the naming rights of their stadiums to a corporate entity. Additionally, if something like this were to be implemented at Penn State, where let's say we sold the naming rights of our stadium to a company like Pepsi, which is heavily invested in our school, we could see a few issues. Number one, for no reason outside of just money, we will be ripping away an over 100-year tradition of our football stadium being named Beaver Stadium. This name dates all the way back to 1893, when our football stadium was named Beaver Field. This removes the things that make college football so great: pageantry and tradition. Also, according to some anecdotal evidence of people at a particular university where there were naming rights to their stadium were sold, there was a lot of outrage from the donor class and people at the university who were ashamed that their university and program would replace the name of their stadium with some sort of foreign entity that stripped away that university's culture. Something like that could easily happen at Penn State, a place that has a lot of alumni and donors who love the sport and who love the university and our traditions. Also, we could see issues with Penn State fans and people in the Penn State community protesting, as seen by the uproar over Fox's big noon kickoff, taking Penn State's biggest home game of the year and putting it at noon instead of a night game. We could see boycotts and other forms of fan protest. All of these are very real issues that will really impact the structure and the culture of our university. Now that I've addressed these harms, I want to go over how I can propose that we address this issue with a two-step solution plan regarding communication and a mandate. Grassroots communication is of extreme importance to any type of cause. And a May 16th, 2023 article in Plural Policy states that grassroots communication allows to bring a community together and allow it to grow close and to take the ideas of that collective community to push for change and improvement. And so by getting the whole Penn State community, students, faculty, staff, alumni, coaches, players, lettermen, all together to push for no new names for Beaver Stadium to be passed as a mandate by our Board of Trustees, I believe that there will be a great chance of success. Once this issue will get before the Penn State Board of Trustees, I feel that there is a very favorable chance that this could get passed, especially considering that there are many members of the Penn State Board of Trustees who played football for Penn State and who understand the traditions and legacy that our football program and our university is based on. So now that I've addressed my two-step solution plan, there are three benefits that I think are the most important and that we will see with the passing of this mandate. We will be preserving the legacy of James A. Beaver. We will be building a bridge between the past and the future, and we'll be upholding our commitment to building teams for the right reasons. To start, this man, James A. Beaver. As the Center County Historical Society's James Angle reports, James A. Beaver was a Civil War veteran, a governor of Pennsylvania, a well-known attorney, a member of the Penn State Board of Trustees from 1873 until 1906, when he was named as an interim president of the university. By keeping his name as the name of our stadium, we will be showing our commitment to honoring one of the great men of our university's history and of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's history. With the new $700 million renovations well underway at Beaver Stadium, in a few years, this will be the greatest place to watch a college football game in the whole country. And what better way, by keeping the name of James A. Beaver on our stadium, will Penn State be showing that we are a place that takes the traditions of the past and merges them with the innovations of the future. Finally, we will be upholding our commitment to building teams for the right reasons. A January 16th, 2024 article in Sports Illustrated, reporter Mark Wogenrich reported that Penn State athletics and Penn State football generated over $200 million in operating revenue, putting us amongst the likes of the universities of Texas, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, and Michigan. Money is not an issue for our university and for our athletic program. And by keeping our name the same, Beaver Stadium, we will be showing that we are not a place that sells out for money just to get players to come here. We are a place that brings people here to compete for championships, to uphold tradition and legacy, and to be at a place that is of great importance and history. So now to close, I've gone over today why this issue of stadium naming rights deals is relevant. I've discussed some potential harms if this issue is not addressed. And I've gone over my two-step solution plan regarding communication and a mandate, and the three main benefits we will see if my solutions are implemented. Now, I call all of you tonight, with me here today, to support the Black Shoes, the Basic Blues, and no new names for Beaver Stadium. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. Well, there goes my grand plans for Bonnie Sirlecki Stadium one day. Wow, we're already on our fifth speaker. It's amazing how time flies when you have such talented people to listen to with smart things to say. Our fifth speaker tonight is Tegan Sharp, who is instructed this semester by Vanessa McLaughlin.
Picture this. You're walking home from class. The sun is shining. The birds are chirping. And you're listening to your favorite song. When suddenly, from behind you, somebody speeds by without warning. As you regain your bearings, you get a good look at him. He's wearing this jacket. And he's wearing this backpack. And he has this haircut. But worst of all, he sped past you riding one of these. Now, maybe you tend to drive on campus. Maybe you bought the parking pass, and so most of your campus commuting is done in a car. So picture this. You're at the intersection between Bigler and Curtin Road, where freshmen love to block everyone from making their turns. But finally, you get your opportunity to make your left turn, and just as you start to turn the wheel, a cyclist riding up the center line speeds right through, completely ignoring the stop sign. Had you turned left a second earlier, you could have hit them and been liable for all kinds of damages. Without somewhere specific for these types of commuters to go, it seems as though they'll go anywhere, regardless of the issues it poses to other commuters. As a student here at Penn State for 4 years, I've witnessed several near misses from people riding electric scooters and several cyclists riding up the center of the road and ignoring stop signs. So that's why today I'm proposing a policy for Penn State to add bike and scooter lanes to the 4 major roads on campus: Bigler, Shortledge, Curtin, and North Burroughs Road. Now, there are several benefits to adding bike lanes to these major roads on campus. One of the biggest is safety. A study done by UC Berkeley found a 50% decrease in cyclist injuries on roads with bicycle lanes as opposed to those without them. Another study by an acute trauma journal found a greater than 5% decrease in traumatic injury for cyclists on roads with bike lanes. On the electric scooter side of things, a study by Nature Communications found that it's twice as safe to ride an electric scooter on the road as opposed to on bike lanes. Penn State as a university claims to be committed to safety of all students, faculty, and other commuters on their campus. But in this case, actions speak louder than words, and something needs to be done here. So how do we go about making this sort of change? Well, it would require the help of 2 different groups of people. The first is Penn State's Office of the Physical Plant. These are the guys behind maintaining roads and sidewalks on campus and would be the ones responsible for actually implementing these bike lanes. Second is the Pennsylvania government. And this is because currently in Pennsylvania, it's actually illegal to ride an electric scooter on the road as opposed to riding it on the sidewalk. So how do we go about implementing this? First, the next time OPP decides the roads need repainted, we add the bike lanes. These 4 roads that I've mentioned are wide enough that if you widen the shoulder, it wouldn't encroach on the vehicle lanes enough, and the bike lanes should be fairly easy to implement. Second, we draft and propose a bill to Pennsylvania Congress, a bill that would allow electric scooters to be ridden on roads as opposed to being strictly ridden on sidewalks. Finally, we update the student handbook, saying that if you're going to use one of these forms of communication or transportation on campus, you must use these lanes for the safety of everyone around you. Now, optimistically, I think that this plan could be implemented within the next 3 to 5 years. That's typically the rate in which roads are repainted. And in Pennsylvania, it typically takes around a year once a bill is introduced to Pennsylvania's Congress for it to be passed through and made into law. So if we assume a year for drafting the bill, a year for gathering support, and a year for it actually making its way through Congress, I think 3 to 5 years is a very reasonable estimate. Now, despite the many benefits to adding bike lanes to campus, any policy like this is always going to have some detractors. I think one of the biggest counter arguments for a policy like this is that the whole reason for the policy being is students acting lawless and careless riding around campus. So why would adding a bike lane make them behave any differently? Well, firstly, for students that do obey the rules of the road, adding these bike lanes would still increase safety for those students and the other people around them. So it's still something Penn State should consider implementing. But for those who don't tend to obey the rules of the road, creating these lanes would implement a sort of social expectation. This is where you are supposed to go. They know this, and so they're more likely to actually be there for fear of judgment of their peers and also the fear of being hit by an oncoming vehicle. Another counter argument to this is that in Pennsylvania, the law around riding electric scooters on roads is relatively solid. They don't have seats, they don't have rear view mirrors, so they don't have enough qualities to qualify them as a road vehicle. However, it turns out Pennsylvania is one of only 2 states to require that electric scooters be ridden strictly on sidewalks. 37 states don't care either way, and 11 states, including New York, actually require that electric scooters are ridden on roads as opposed to being ridden on sidewalks due to safety concerns. I hope that my speech has helped show you that Penn State implementing bike lanes would be a significant improvement to campus safety for all commuters. The state of Pennsylvania should be hard-pressed to change this law for the safety of everyone living in the Keystone State commuting around urban areas. And Penn State should be eager to implement these bike lanes for the safety of everyone commuting through campus. Thank you.
Thank you, team. At long last, we have reached the prime time slot. So our 6th speaker this evening, I would like to welcome Reda Al-Aljami. I can't even read my own typing.
It's a bit hard.
Alajmi.
Yeah.
Yes, that's much better. What do you know? Reda is also instructed by Mark Kohler.
Right now, think about the last family gathering you attended. Everyone is there, but no one is really there. Each person is glued to their phone, scrolling through social media feeds, rather than engaging with each other. This is not a rare sight anymore. Unfortunately, it's a reality. I've seen firsthand how social media affects our mental health. I've felt the toll myself and watched how it impacted me and those around me. The American Psychological Association says that social media contributes to increased anxiety, depression, and feelings of loneliness, especially among young people. To address these issues, we need to implement a digital literacy program in schools to equip students with the tools they need to navigate it safely and responsibly. First, I'll explain the specific mental health risks linked to social media. Then I'll explain how a digital literacy program will address these issues. And finally, I'll discuss why this program is feasible and practical for implementation. Social media today is not just a platform. It's a system designed to capture our attention and keep us coming back for more. Platforms like Instagram or TikTok are specifically engineered to release dopamine, which is the brain's pleasure chemical, to make you an addict. The numbers are staggering. According to Pew Research, 95% of teens own a smartphone, and 45% of them report being online almost constantly. And to be more specific, 1 in 5 teens say they're on social media almost constantly, as you can see in the graph to the right. How do they do it? By simply moving from one app to the other, as you can see in the graph to the left. Imagine the toll this takes on young minds, especially as studies from the American Psychological Association say that teens who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media are far more likely to develop anxiety, depression, and feelings of loneliness. Every scroll, every like, and every comment conditions them to seek validation from their screens, leading to what psychologists describe as a digital dependency. For instance, a 15-year-old student named Sarah shared in a study by Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, that she often stays up past midnight scrolling through those social media platforms. She just says that she can't stop. And this is just one example of how social media leads to compulsive behaviors, especially when it's engineered to exploit dopamine release and disrupt our hormonal balance. Understanding the problem is just the first step. Now let's take a look at how a digital literacy program can empower students to manage social media safely and responsibly. My solution isn't about restricting social media use, no. It's about equipping students with the tools they need to navigate it safely and responsibly. A well-designed digital literacy educational program for grades 5 through 12 can make all the difference. This program would be integrated into existing health or technology classes, with teachers receiving specific training to guide students effectively. For grades 5 through 8, those lessons would include interactive activities like role-playing scenarios to identify harmful content, while students in grades 9 through 12 would engage in discussions and projects analyzing the mental health impacts of digital dependency. A pilot program could begin in a few districts to gather feedback before scaling it nationwide. As Dr. Vivek Murthy, the US Surgeon General, emphasized, digital literacy is one of the essential tools to protect youth from the risks of social media. And according to a recent poll by Morning Consult, 7 in 10 voters support teaching social media literacy in schools, which means that the society is already agreeing with the idea, and parents would love to see that happen to their kids. Now we know that social media addiction is not a joke, and we agreed on a digital literacy solution. But some might say, can't we just cut social media and solve the problem, right? Well, digital literacy education is not only an ideal solution, but it's also a realistic one. Unlike restrictive policies that aim to limit social media use without addressing the root causes, this approach empowers students to make healthier choices on their own. And here's why it works. A, proven effectiveness in schools. Schools that have implemented digital literacy education have seen positive outcomes. Research from the National Alliance on Mental Illness shows that students in these schools experience lower rates of cyberbullying and depression, and B, sustainable funding options. This approach can be funded. Schools can utilize state educational budgets, while mental health grants provide extra support for such initiatives. And C, support from experts. Technology ethicist Tristan Harris, featured in The Social Dilemma, argues that education, not prohibition, empowers students to use social media responsibly. Each of these points demonstrates that digital literacy education is not only feasible, but also an impactful long-term solution. Let's make those family gatherings moments to reconnect, not just occasions to coexist. Today, we examined how social media can disrupt young people's mental resilience and well-being, and we discussed a proactive solution digital literacy education that can empower students to use social media safely and responsibly, and we explore the feasibility of this approach, highlighting its proven effectiveness, sustainable funding, and expert support. As Dr. Karen Mossberger, a professor of public affairs and digital literacy expert, said, digital literacy is not just a skill, it's a necessity for students to navigate information, participate actively in society, and succeed in their future careers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Freda. How about another collective round of applause for our 6 speakers? Okay, now is the intermission. We are going to take just a brief break to allow our judges a chance to reflect and make their choices. So if you are watching us over Zoom, you are free to log off that social media platform and go on with your evening, or you are welcome to hang out for a few minutes as we intermiss. And in a few moments, I will be welcoming Dan Lee back to the front of the room to announce our winners. So stay tuned. Thank you, everyone.
I want to thank our 6 speakers again. Thanks so much for being here and your time. And I also want to thank our 3 judges in person, 1 judge on Zoom. This was very close. Very, very close. In no particular order, in 4th, 5th, and 6th place, I have Evan Varlas. Thank you. Come on up. Evan, everybody. Tegan Sharp. Red Hot. Allowed you me. In 3rd place, so close, Andre Marinac. In 2nd place, Kai Rivera. Which means that our 1st place participant in the fall 2024 CAS Civic Engagement Public Speaking Contest, Sheree, hey, thank you so much. Please. Thank you all for your incredible work. Yeah. Thank you all for your incredible work. Truly great speeches. I reflect what Dr. Engel said. It's been my privilege to teach CAS 100A, and in any of my classes, I would have been more than happy with all the speeches we've seen tonight. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Bonnie Serlecki for some closing words, but congratulations once again to our 6 speakers.
Wow. That was amazing. That was a hard decision, right? And I think, again, that's kind of the interesting part about a speaking competition, right? And to elaborate that as we close out tonight, I actually want to return to the remarks that Dr. Jeremy Engels just shared with the group here in person. All of our judges were extremely impressed by these speeches. And Dr. Engels, who most recently has been the director of the Paterno Fellows program here on campus, says that you guys inspired him and give him really a lot of hope, thinking about what amazing future leaders you're going to be. And so when we go back to the idea of a contest, see, that's one of the things we've learned about public speaking this semester in CAS 100, right? That, yeah, if you are effective at persuasion and you are effective at making strategic choices to address your audience, that can absolutely help you get power. But the way that I and many of the other CAS 100 instructors think of public speaking is that by participating in this as an act of civic engagement, you're also helping distribute power, right? Because, hey, you're all just college students, right? Where the competition part comes in is knowing that when you're giving a speech, it's not all about you as the speaker, right? Again, like I talked about at the beginning, you certainly have all chosen topics that you're passionate about and topics that have impacted your lives in some way. But to make your speech effective and persuasive, you all made choices to explain to us why we should care and how we're impacted. I mean, I'll just use myself as an example. Ty, I shared also at the beginning that for me, I like being a walker on campus because the times that I am in my car, guess what? I am that Honda Civic. That is literally my car. And so I am going to be the one getting crushed by the giant SUV should an accident happen. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Andre, I am a little bit embarrassed to admit that I have been victim to a cyber attack and have had that fraudulent charge on my account. It's been a while. I'm doing better, but I appreciate actually some of the strategies that you shared. Yeah, I gotta get me some of those burner cards. Yeah. Shrey, I'm a social media user. I see the AI deepfakes. I talked to my mom, a 70-year-old, very lovely woman on the phone who shares with me the ways that she's been fooled by false AI images. Of course, I wouldn't be fooled by such things, right? But yeah, we're all seeing those impacts. And I was just so startled too and shocked. 90% of those deepfakes are non-consensual pornography. That's really disturbing, right? And I think we should all care about that. Evan, you know I'm a football fan. In fact, as soon as we're wrapped up tonight, I'm headed home to watch my Green Bay Packers on Thursday Night Football, right? Yay. But yeah, every single person here and every single person on the Zoom is a member of the Penn State community, even if you're a parent, a friend. We all chose to be at this university, whether as a student, a staff member, an instructor, a faculty member, a parent. We've made the choice to be here in part because the tradition of Penn State, right? Personally, also, my research interest is communication and sport. So I've studied NIL and some of the corporatization and its negative impacts on college athletics. Tegan, I've had those near misses too. Why do we call them near misses? Shouldn't they be near hits? I should probably look up the origin of that phrase. But yeah, I still remain kind of confused of why we don't have bike lanes to protect, especially if we want to encourage more commuters to campus to choose walking or biking or scooters, since one of the other issues a speaker could have chosen to talk about was our parking issue on campus, of course, right? Rita, I've been doing a little better job with my own social media scrolling at night. I could still work on it a little bit, but I think all of us are very well aware of how our own mental health has been affected. And then when we think about what different choices we would make for our own children and for other future leaders of the world, it's really important to think about that impact and that connection between social media and mental health. And we know Penn State students often experience a lot of different pressures, and then our social media use on top doesn't help. So very clearly, each speaker tonight made us care and made really strong choices to convince us that these social problems they've chosen to address are important. So as we close, not only is that an amazing congratulations to you all for being able to practice that skill set, but let that be a challenge to all of us to think about the ways that we talk to members in our community, the way we relate to each other, and the way that we work to make our communities and the world more just and compassionate. Thank you all so much. Have a fabulous night and stay warm. Thank you.